Welcome to ClienTrax support. My name is Avery. Today I'll be going over how to do returns and refunds from the new visit window. Right now I have my client card up, and this will be the first set of transactions for this client. In order to add these new items, we're going to go to the new visit window. We're then going to add a few items. So I've added these items to my inventory already, and you can add whatever it would that would be as part of the transaction. And we're going to say these are the 3 items this client is purchasing right now. And let's say they paid cash for the exact amount that it is. Notice they now have a 0 balance, and they have all 3 items included in their history. Let's say that they then decide, hey, one of these items, test item 1 here, I don't need. I would like to return that item. In order to do a return through the new visit window, you would simply go up here to the new visit window, and you would add that item again. With it highlighted, you would then click the word return. Notice that that drops that down here with return test item 1. I can also do the same thing by adding it, highlight that line, and then click the word return. For right now, I'm just going to have 1 return for test item 1. And let's say that I refunded their $5 cash. In order to return that, I'm going to give them $5. So that's a -5 here for the tendered amount. Notice now I sold them originally, these 3 items. They paid originally in cash for all those items. And then they did a return on item 1, and I gave them their money back. Let's say another scenario that I have a client come in, I invoice them out with 1 item here, test item 1, and I was really supposed to hold it because they weren't sure if they were going to get it. Notice the $sign. But instead of holding it like that, I accidentally went through and I totaled it out. And now let's say that customer calls and says, hey, that item that I want you to hold, I don't need it anymore. I don't want that item anymore. How do I get rid of this here? It's very simple. Because it wasn't really sold, I would want to void this item. And in order to do that, I would go back to the client card, go to invoice history, select the invoice here, so that's that 1 item, then I would click void, adding my password. Notice that it now says void here. I can total that out. And because I didn't have any payment, I'm going to leave the tendered amount 0. If I did put in a payment for some reason, even though they didn't want that item, they weren't purchasing it at that time, I could use this tendered amount in order to 0 out that balance. Closing these out. Notice now that that item has been voided. The balance is returned to 0. This is perfect for, let's say, you have these items and stuff that you really shouldn't have done or shouldn't have charged these clients for, and they needed to be returned in a way that returns them to inventory because they weren't ever sold. Finally, let's try invoicing out a different item. Let's do test item 2. And let's say after I've invoiced this out, that I put in that they did $10 for it of cash, bringing their total to 0. And then we find out, hey, they have not paid, that payment shouldn't have been there. Or if, let's say, you need to return a payment of, hey, I was going to pay cash, can I get that cash back and can I charge it on my credit card instead? From the transaction history, you would highlight these lines and you would click Return Payment. Enter your password, and note you've refunded that payment. And then you can go back to the new visit window, or the client card I mean, and go to Payment and make a payment of choosing a check or credit card or whatever it is that they're trying to use instead of cash. For right now, I'm going to keep it simple and keep it of cash just for this instance. And that would be a different payment method. Once you have all of your items here in the transaction history, several clinics will often realize that they forgot a patient or they highlighted and selected the wrong patient, that these items were associated with the golden retriever here. In order to edit that, you would first need to find out test here, our golden retrievers, patient ID number 202. You can then double click these items and we can hit edit patient. We are then able to assign that 202. Notice now a patient has been assigned. Or let's say a provider should have been given credit. Instead, provider 5, someone else. You can edit the provider. So that way that can be changed from provider 6 to our computer operator, the VL6. Or whatever it is. For right now, we're just going to leave that as it is. Transaction histories can be one of the more complicated matters that you have in your clinic, and keeping track of your books is very important. Without doing this properly, you can always have the options of having an incorrect balance displaying. I would always recommend if you start to try to do returns or voids or running into problems where there's multiple lines coming up here in your transaction history and it's very, very complicated and it's just not looking correct and it's not telling the story of what really happened, always call ClienTrax support at 614-875-2245 so that way they can help you. As you can see, there's a lot of different options here and a lot of steps involved in this. It can be easy once you get the hang of it, but it's always easier to work with a support representative and get this corrected the first time instead of having so many lines that make it such a complex transaction history that it's hard to understand what really happened. Again, that phone number is 614-875-2245.